Would you be the jerk for calling somebody selfish over brownies? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for telling my sister nothing she ever does is more important than my wife's school? My wife decided earlier this year she wanted to get a master's degree in business. She's been working full-time and attending school full-time on nights and weekends. She's taking summer classes so she can graduate sooner. One evening when I wasn't home from work, my sister, a single mother who lives with my parents, came by unannounced and just dropped off her kids, 6-year-old male and 3-year-old, because she had something to do. My wife was flustered because she was trying to get a mini paper done, and my sister said, "Freak you, here are my kids," and left. I left work early and took the kids back to my parents, and I found out my sister had a random meetup with her best friend because her friend got dumped. He thought this was important enough to disrupt my wife. We argued over how irresponsible my sister is, and I told her, "Nothing you ever do in your life will be as important as my wife's school or career." My sister started crying about how I was being so unfair to her. It's hard for her as a single mom at her age. I told her, "You made that mistake twice and thought everyone would help you. I'm not, and my wife's not. Raise your own kids." This would make my sister cry harder, and my mom kicked me out of the house for disrespecting my sister and her children. This whole thing could have been avoided if my sister didn't act entitled to think she could drop off her kids in the first place. So personally, I understand why OP would be upset. And I'm assuming that these comments and the severity of these comments come from OP being justifiably upset. That said, telling your sister, "Nothing you ever do in your life will be as important as my wife's school or career," I think that's going a little bit too far, personally. I get you're upset with your sister, but you don't have to put down her entire life, anything she has any ambitions for. What do you guys think? Was what OP said just totally justifiable? Or was it a bit much? I'd like to know what you guys think. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for answering a rude question with a rude question? I'm a happily married gay man, and yesterday, I and my husband were at a friend's house celebrating their birthday. At the end of the party, a small group of people were sitting around the fire talking crap when a woman, who I don't know, a friend of a friend type of thing, asked me and my husband straight to our faces, "So, do you like being screwed up the butt or is it your husband?" And before you all ask, no, she wasn't drunk, she was the designated driver. I replied, "Do you like to screw on all fours or on your back?" She got mad and stormed off, calling me a jerk. At the time, everyone there laughed, most were drunk, but the woman was my friend's girlfriend's relative of something, and now he and his girlfriend are getting some backlash. He's mad at me now because even though what she said was offensive, I didn't need to stoop to her level. I'm starting to feel bad about it. The last thing I wanted was to cause trouble for my friend. So, am I the jerk? Honestly, I definitely don't think OP's the jerk here. There's a lot of things that stooping to their level is obviously not a great choice in. But in this situation, when you got asked such a pointed, inappropriate question, to come back with a pointed, inappropriate question in that public forum is just as equally okay in my eyes. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not paying my daughter's tuition after she refuses to talk to me? I, 45-year-old male, decided to stop paying my daughter's, 19-year-old female, college tuition after she blocked me basically everywhere and won't talk to me. This started about 2 years ago when I found out my then ex-wife Bertha, 44-year-old female, had an emotional affair and kissing someone else. My ex and my daughter were really close. She was her only daughter while we had 2 younger sons. Though the divorce did change our relationship, I was still in good terms with my daughter. A couple of months after that whole mess, one of my friends, Stacy, 31-year-old female, was really there for me the whole time, and we decided to get together. I don't think our relationship is wrong. We're both over 30 and actual adults. Once again, we were mostly cordial still, though I'm pretty sure my ex made some nasty remarks. Life went on until recently, Stacy figured out she was pregnant. I do realize I'm older than the average dad, but once again, I don't think I did anything wrong. I also proposed to her because I do genuinely love her. My sons were entirely supportive and actually pretty excited when I told them. My daughter, on the other hand, got super mad, and presumably this is what led to the blocking silent treatment. All of this happened during December. Stacy gave birth 2 weeks ago and we were talking about cutting my daughter's tuition for next year because she hasn't been at any family functions and hasn't talked to me since January. She figured it out through her college portal and got really mad once again. She told me about how I was marrying to a person so much younger than me and so forth. It's like she only wants me for my money and doesn't want anything to do with me. I don't know how much of the daughter's personal feelings about just being close to the ex and not wanting to see their parents separate may be manifesting in their behaviors, but I gotta say that her actions are definitely disappointing to me. It's hard to say why she does what she does or how she feels without having any kind of communication. It doesn't really sound like anybody's talking to either side. I also don't know the conditions of paying her college tuition. I mean, I'd like to see OP continue to support their kid, but I can't personally blame them for feeling put off about it or wanting to pull back on it when their kid pretty much just puts them down and thinks bad about them. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling a pregnant woman to sit on the ground instead of giving her my seat? My nephews both graduated from high school this morning, and I wanted to sit up front, so I camped out a bit in front of the entrance. I brought my folding camping chair and my headphones to listen to my show. About 40 minutes before the school would let us inside, a pregnant woman got next to me since somebody let her in line, I assume her partner. She asked me within 5 minutes, politely admittedly, if she could have my chair as she was going to have trouble standing the whole time. I said no, sorry, I needed more, bad feet and knees, and went back to my things. She asked me again within 2 minutes and the answer was the same. She, however, got a little mad at me and said that she was going to be struggling the whole time and asked her partner to tell me. He asked me himself, politely, and I again responded that sorry, but I needed more, and suggested that she could wait in their car or just sit on the ground. At this point, the husband directly called me a jerk, but left me alone. Am I the jerk? I think OP's definitely not the jerk. Now, I fully understand OP would be the jerk if they were in like some kind of accessible zoned seating, but they just fought for their spot. They were there early, they got the spot they exactly wanted. They had no obligation to give it up. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to lend money to a close friend who consistently makes poor financial decisions? I have a close friend, let's call her Sarah, who always seems to be in financial trouble. She frequently spends money impulsively, neglects to save, and finds herself in debt. Over the years, she's asked me for financial help several times, and I've always tried to be supportive. However, recently Sarah approached me with another request for a significant sum of money. This time I hesitated. I couldn't ignore the pattern of poor financial choices, and the fact that my previous loans hadn't been repaid as promised. I gently explained to Sarah that I had concerns about lending her more money as I feared it would only perpetuate her cycle of financial irresponsibility. I suggested that she take steps to manage her finances better, seek professional advice, or explore other options to address her financial struggles. Sarah became upset and accused me of not being a true friend, claiming that I was being judgmental and unsupportive. She argued that she desperately needed the money and that I should be there for her in her time of need. While I understand that everyone faces financial challenges, I couldn't shake off the feeling that continuously enabling Sarah's poor financial choices wouldn't be helping her in the long run. I believe that true support sometimes means holding someone accountable and encouraging them to make positive changes. So, am I the jerk for refusing to lend money to my close friend, even though she's struggling financially? I mean, I think OP's already done more than most would do. Most people wouldn't even have gotten to the situation where they say, I've bailed my friend out multiple times, should I keep bailing them out? Like, yeah, at some point they just have to learn responsibility with their financial situation. Our next story is, am I the jerk for asking my 25-year-old male girlfriend, 29-year-old female, to make my plate of food differently than she was serving to others? So I recently became official with the lady I've been dating for 6 months. We decided to have the first barbecue of the nice summer weather in our area at her place. We don't live together currently. She decided to make steaks and baked potatoes, and I made some side salads, and I was also responsible for the drinks and chips. As my girlfriend got cooking, it just panned out that she ended up plating and serving to people as her steaks finished resting. When I went over to watch her plating, I noticed she had put butter and herbs and stuff all over the steaks. My family doesn't do this, and I've never seen it done this way, so I asked her politely if she would put mine aside and I would do my fixings. I just want my steak with ketchup, I'm pretty plain. Both she, her sister, and her dad gave me very pointed looks. Later that evening, she said that she felt it was rude to the chef, her in this instance, to ask for my food separately, and that she wished I would have just trusted her to make me a nice plate of food, and that I shouldn't do that when I'm a guest anywhere. I fairly common politely ask for my food to be made differently or more plain when I'm a guest somewhere, or at a restaurant because I generally prefer plain food. I didn't think this was rude. Am I the jerk for asking for my own food to be served differently outside my own home? So I'm thinking a common sentiment here is going to be that OP doesn't eat steaks right to begin with, just wanting their steak with ketchup. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, if you don't have any adverse reaction to any of the ingredients she was using in preparing that steak, then I think OP's just being honestly overly picky when they're making food for a group of people. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not inviting my parents or sister to my graduation because I didn't want to deal with the disappointment? My parents have always put my sister Cassie first. Cassie did need extra support, as she does have genuine issues with depression and anxiety, but they refused to compromise. It always came at my expense. The final straw was my high school graduation back in 2019. Cassie had a pageant at the same time. The plan was for both of our parents to attend the first half of Cassie's pageant. Our mother would stay at Cassie's pageant, and our dad would leave to attend and record my graduation. Before Dad was about to leave, Cassie said she was having anxiety and needed them both there. He texted me to find my own ride home from graduation. I had been so hopeful that my parents would finally follow through with their promise to be there for me. In the honors sector class photo, I was the only student who didn't have any family members come. I felt awful. My mother, dad, and Cassie were already home when I got back. They had ordered dinner and were celebrating Cassie's pageant. They didn't even seem to remember or care about me and my graduation. My parents tried to act friendly and congratulate me, but I ignored them. My mother tried hugging me, but I pushed past her. I decided then that I just couldn't depend on them not to disappoint me. My graduation was 3 weeks ago. I didn't even bother reaching out to my mother, dad, or Cassie. I gave my ceremony tickets to 2 friends and donated the rest. My mother and dad reached out to me, saying they just learned about my ceremony through social media. Neither of them went to college, so they assumed that the college got out at the same time as the local high schools. They asked why I hadn't even asked them. I told them that they've proven that I can't depend on them by always leaving me as a second thought to Cassie. I know she has issues and needs extra support, but they've never even tried to compromise, and I didn't want to deal with the disappointment again. My parents told me that they and Cassie were heartbroken, that their daughter or sister would disregard them this way. We do have other family members who my parents are much closer with after the pandemic. We were not really involved with each other before, which is why they weren't at my graduation, and why we didn't go to their kids' graduations. They know both sides of the story, but told me I was a jerk. They said how my parents felt so bad about my high school graduation and that I was being selfish and denied my parents the chance to make it right and finally be able to put their guilt behind them. I switched my social media to private to avoid these comments, but now I'm worried that they are right and that I've been selfish and not understanding of Cassie's needs. Am I the jerk? Honestly, growing up in an environment that OP did, I can't blame them for feeling the way they do. I feel like the invites still probably should have gone out, but OP should have operated in a way where they honestly expected them not to show up or not to support OP. In fact, if OP wanted to guilt trip, they could kind of rope that into it and say, "Here, I know it's most likely that you won't show up, but here's an invite." I mean, what it truly comes down to is, does OP even want them there? If OP doesn't want them to show up, are they really the jerk for that? Our next story is, am I the jerk? Friend yelled at me for getting a cat. My friend, female 24, was a recent roommate and moved out of state to pursue a job. She was allergic to cats. I had always had pets growing up and wanted to have one again. We had some outdoor cats that I often fed and always liked to pet. I never let them in while my roommate lived here. The week she left, I let one in and the cat was so happy. I had to help him out. I gave him a bath, got him fixed, and now he's a very pampered prince, living mostly inside with me. She was going to come back in 2 weeks to pick up the last bit of her things, but I promised myself that I would clean up before she came and vacuum as much cat hair as possible. Not that he sheds that much, I didn't tell her I was getting the cat. I had an incredible 2 weeks with the cat. Before she came back, I gave the cat to a friend to watch over it so there wouldn't be extra dander in the apartment. Mind you, I kept my roommate's door closed so the cat wouldn't go in. She comes back, and if you've ever had a cat, you know there's always a slight smell and slight dander. She immediately starts asking questions as her eyes get puffy. I told her I got a cat, but it hasn't gone in her room, and I tried to vacuum as much as possible. And I even got her allergy meds. She didn't have a bed, so she was expecting to sleep on the couch. The cat had been laying on the couch the past 2 weeks. I got her an air mattress and put it in her room though. We went on the porch so she could breathe a little bit better. She then proceeded to yell at me at how selfish I was and how inconsiderate I was. I told her she had moved and I was doing her a favor by letting her store stuff at my place. She stayed 1 night and then left when she was supposed to stay 2 nights. We haven't talked in 5 days, which is rare for us. So I understand the immediacy of what happened here. It just kind of happened right away that OP ended up taking this cat in. I don't think it necessarily makes OP a jerk, but OP should have immediately reached out and said, "Hey, I've taken in a cat. I know your stuff is over here. Is there any extra thing I can do to help out or make it a little bit more okay?" I mean, OP went quiet about it and then just dropped it on her head. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not giving my sister a clean plate? At dinner last night, my sister wanted a second helping, so I took her plate and got her one. She was upset when she saw the plate and asked why I brought her a dirty plate. I said it was her plate that she was just eating off of. She said that was nasty and I should have gotten her a clean one. I think that since she was the one just eating off of it, it can't be that dirty. My father said that was indeed ill-mannered, although said that she was worse for calling me on it in front of everyone. I think it's silly to get a new plate. The only germs on it were her own. I think unless there was like some really stuck-on stuff that would interfere with whatever the new food item was, then OP's completely honestly in the right here. Why need to do even more dishes? I think that's definitely overly germophobic and weird. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not reminding my ex he was supposed to come over to see our daughter? I, 26-year-old female, have a 7-year-old daughter. My ex, 28-year-old male, wasn't involved in her life by his own choosing. Back in December, he reached out. It took some time, talking, and a little therapy. He's been back in our daughter's life for about 4 months now. We're working with the courts to establish paternity and for him to get custody. In the meantime, I've let him visit her at my place. He's taken her on day trips. Since getting a bigger apartment, he's had her spend the night. He was supposed to visit her Wednesday, have dinner with us, and watch a movie. We try to do things with the 3 of us, per the therapist's recommendations, so she can see us get along. My ex said he'd be over around 6 o'clock. He didn't show up. By 6:30, my daughter was hungry, so I fed her. I tried to put off the movie, but eventually let her watch it. She was disappointed about her dad not showing up. I put her to bed at 9. 11:30, my ex calls, freaking out. He said he forgot we were supposed to have dinner. He only remembered because his girlfriend came home from work and asked how everything went. Rather than apologizing, he got mad at me and asked why I didn't call him. I said I'm not going to chase him down. I already spent 9 months doing that when I was pregnant, begging him to be in her life. I'm not going to do that now. It's up to him to make an effort and remember this stuff. We had therapy the next day and she's on my side. However, my ex insists that I should have called. I'm frustrated that he hasn't tried to apologize to our daughter. My mom said that I should have called. Am I the jerk? 100% this is on the ex's side. He's supposed to remember these things. You're not a walking reminder board. And honestly, in a situation where you're not with somebody, it sounds to me like the last thing you want to do is have that level of contact where you have to reach out to them all the time and remind them of things. It's one thing to socialize and be around them. It's another to be always chit-chatting and reminding them of things. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my child's father's new wife that she can't come with us on our son's college tours? My son will be a senior in high school this fall, and we've been touring colleges. We toured a few this spring and plan to tour several out-of-state ones throughout the summer. The plan was for myself, my husband, and his father to do the tours together. We'll be touring 4 schools and he's coming to 3 of them. Some background, my son's father and I split up before our son was 6 months old. Soon after our relationship ended, I met my now husband and we got married when son was 3. My ex has been supportive of our relationship and thinks my husband is a great stepfather. Our co-parenting relationship has been challenging at times, but we've done just fine for the sake of our son. Last year, my ex eloped with this woman, Shelly, not her real name. They dated for only a year or so before marrying. I don't know her too well since we've only met twice, but I know she has 3 kids of her own. Her oldest is about the same age as my son. My son dislikes her. He thinks Shelly is mentally unhinged, is way too involved in his personal business, and he blames her for being the reason he hasn't been able to spend as much quality time with his father lately. Earlier this week, I was coordinating with my ex about the details of our next tour. Everything was great until he mentioned that Shelly would be coming along on all our tours. I asked why and if it was necessary that she tag along. He said that she just wanted to be supportive. I asked him if her daughter was looking at these schools too, since she's also going to be a senior, and he said no. So why is she coming if her own child isn't planning on attending those schools? I told him that our son should get a say in who comes to the tours and that I would ask him what he thought about Shelly joining us. After I got off the phone with my ex, I asked our son if he wanted Shelly to come with us. He immediately replied no and that he wasn't comfortable with her coming. I told our son that he should speak with his father and let him know about what he thinks. Fast forward to last night, my ex calls and is furious that I would get our son involved in this matter. I replied that our son is the one touring the colleges and making decisions about his future, and he gets to decide who can come along. Not to mention, our son is almost an adult and at his age is more than capable of deciding who he wants in his life and to what extent. Son has been vocal to his father about his feelings about Shelly. He accepts that his father loves her, but he doesn't see her as family. So I told my ex that if he loves his son and wants to continue having a positive relationship with him, then he needs to respect his wishes and leave his wife at home. End of story. Ex replies that I'm the jerk, Shelly cares about our son, and that he should be allowed to bring his wife with him whenever he chooses. Was I wrong? Am I the jerk? Honestly, I definitely don't think OP's wrong here. I think this son who's touring these colleges to figure out what they want for their future can very well decide who they bring along and who they want there. Now, if OP's ex chooses not to go because they're not allowed to bring their wife, I understand that, but he can't force it to bring his wife along. Our next story is, am I the jerk for kicking out my sister because she wouldn't respect my wife? I, 32-year-old male, and my wife, 31-year-old female, sleep in separate bedrooms. It sounds a little weird, but it isn't. My wife has went through some things, and one thing she refuses to do is sleep in the same room as someone. The only exception is babies and children. She told me from the beginning she trusts me with every fiber of her being, but she just cannot do it. Of course, I didn't care, and I have my own little bat cave where I sleep. Now here's where the actual story is. My sister, 27-year-old female, asked if she could stay over at our house for the weekend, because apparently her and her roommate got into an argument. Me and my wife agreed, and I told my sister about my wife's room thing. If you know she's sleeping, don't go in there. My sister was always kind of a spoiled brat, but it really shone here. She complained that the bed in the guest room was too lumpy, and she didn't want to sleep in my room because of my man smell. After all this, it was obvious that she would complain about the couch too. I told her my wife's room was off limits, and it was either the options we gave her, or she could find a motel. She agreed and everything seemed fine, until I woke up at 3 in the darn morning to find my wife yelling along with my sister. When I went to go see what happened, my wife was crying and my sister was just yelling back. I learned now that my sister sleeps in her underwear, so that made it even worse. I got into an argument and started yelling at my sister to get her crap and get out. Had one rule and she broke it. Her last statement was calling my wife a crybaby. My wife told me that my sister was trying to sleep in her room, possibly trying to kick her out. After that, I got text messages and calls from my parents saying that I was a horrible brother for kicking her out like that, and agreeing with her, saying that my wife was a crybaby and she should suck it up. Of course, I just didn't listen to it, but my wife came to me and started talking about how I could have handled it better, and how she got texts from my mother saying the same. She said later the same day that she was happy I protected her. I still don't know why she said that, but it was probably my mother. This is really for if I should just apologize and get my parents off my butt. Am I the jerk? I just wish OP clarified a little bit more about the sleeping situation with the sister. When the sister came over, were they expected to just sleep on the couch? Did they have another guest bedroom? Like, was it a situation where they decided the couch isn't good enough for me, I want the guest bedroom, and went in there to start complaining to OP's wife? Either way, they set the boundaries and those boundaries were immediately violated. I can't blame OP or their wife for being upset. This next story is, am I the jerk for calling my sister selfish over brownies? Hey Reddit, I, 16, recently had a disagreement with my sister R, 14, over some homemade brownies she had baked. So here's what happened. My sister loves baking and often spends time in the kitchen. However, something that has become frustrating is her habit of spending an excessive amount of time taking photos of the things she's baked. Like, she takes 10 minutes on it. This became more of an issue when she made brownies the other day. As soon as the brownies were out of the oven, my other sisters and I wanted some. We started taking a few brownie bites when R saw what we were doing and immediately told us not to touch them until she had taken her photos. I responded by saying, "You take photos all the time, and I'm sure you have images of brownies somewhere. Just let us eat these now." My comment upset her, and she insisted that we had no right to eat the brownies without her permission, considering she was the one who made them. She then packed up the brownies in a box and left. Feeling frustrated, I texted her later, calling her selfish for taking the brownies. I argued that since she made them using household ingredients, she had no right to claim them. My other sisters agreed with me and even our parents, though they didn't want to get involved, sided with us, saying that my sister was overreacting. Since this, R hasn't spoken to me or my other siblings. Am I the jerk? I still don't think I did anything wrong. So I just don't understand why everybody's so spoiled that they can't just wait a little bit for them to have their fun with what they're doing. I understand you just don't get it. You think it's dumb or childish or some modern age internet fad where they have to have Instagram pictures of all the things they make, but they went out of their way to make those brownies. So God forbid if they want to set up a photo shoot for them before they serve them. I would say in your situation, just feel lucky that you're even getting brownies to begin with. You want a surefire way to make sure that your sister never makes you any more treats? This kind of behavior is definitely the way. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.